Good evening, everyone. As most of you know, if not all of you, I am Tracy Bonashinsky, and I'm the Mid-Sound Fisheries Enhancement Group Project Manager for the Lake City Floodplain Park project. I'm honored, truly honored that so many of you have taken time to be with us, especially during this season of winter festivals and cultural and religious celebrations. It really means so much to me and to our entire project team that you have chosen to spend some of your time here with us tonight. We have a lot to cover tonight, so I'm going to jump right in. So we'll start tonight by reviewing information that you may have heard already if you've been with us from the beginning, or that will be catch up for you if you're joining us for the first time tonight. We'll share what we heard from you in workshop number 2 and our related in-person outreach. Amber, our amazing landscape architect, will explain how we've incorporated the park designs that you generated in the Build Your Park exercise into our evolving understanding of what this natural space can be. And then she will introduce our activity for breakout rooms. After breakout rooms, we'll come back together for a representative from each group to share what their group created and for the project team to share next steps. Just a few other notes. This meeting is being recorded and will be posted to the project website for future viewing. If you are comfortable being in a recording on camera, you're welcome to have your camera on. And if you do not want to appear in the recording, then you can just turn your camera off and participate just by voice. So we'll continue to take feedback related to this stage of the project via a survey that will be on the project website for 1 week following the workshop. And then finally, Lake City is a wonderfully diverse community. Your friends and neighbors have come here tonight bringing diverse backgrounds and experiences with them. So please be open, curious, and respectful as people share their unique hopes and dreams for the park and have a lot of fun creating together. This project is a partnership among Seattle Parks and Recreation, Seattle Public Utilities, and Mid-Sound Fisheries Enhancement Group. Mid-Sound, for those of you we've not met yet, is a nonprofit dedicated to on-the-ground salmon recovery and watershed restoration with local communities. We are really honored to be a part of this project with our city partners and with you. We're working with 2 really fantastic technical consultant groups, David O Consulting Group and the Watershed Company. You'll see many of us from all of these organizations here tonight listening to you so that we can incorporate your feedback into the design of the park. We're at the very early stages of the project here. We expect to develop conceptual park design options from your feedback tonight, from which the city will select a preferred option to advance to the next phases of design. So this is an important milestone, and I really want to emphasize that there is so much about the design that we'll need to refine in collaboration with you as we move through 2023. And then if all remains on schedule, construction of the park is projected to happen sometime in late 2024 or 2025. Our goal tonight is to share what we heard from you in workshops 1 and 2 and in our related in-person outreach, share how community priorities relate to Thornton Creek and floodplain reconnection goals, and to hear your feedback about the park amenities that you would like to be included in the preferred option. So one of our overarching project goals is to create a space with you that connects a diverse Lake City community to an improved natural area. And then our other overarching goals are to restore Thornton Creek on the property to a more natural state, to reduce large-scale flooding up and downstream, to create and restore habitat for salmon and wildlife, and to improve the health of Thornton Creek and its watershed. I know that most, if not all of you, are very familiar by now with where the project site is, but to review and bring those along who are joining us for the first time, the future park is located on Northeast 125th Street between 23rd and 24th Avenues Northeast. It's about 4 blocks west of the Lake City branch of the Seattle Public Library and Lake City's Civic Core. And it contains a stretch of the north branch of Thornton Creek. Okay, I wanted to give you a bit more context about the immediate surroundings of the project site. As you can see here, the project site is represented by that red L on this picture here. It's bordered by private property on the north and west sides and most of the east side. There's no through street bordering the north end of the site. Current access to the property is from Northeast 125th Street. 24th Avenue Northeast to the east of the project site is a really short cul-de-sac street. It's a dead end. And then the southeast corner of our site, that little tip of the L on Northeast 125th Street, that corner hosts some of the steepest slopes on the site. So these are just some things for us all to keep in mind as we think about what the space could be and how it can be accessed. Okay, before I review what we've heard from you in workshops 1 and 2 and in our in-person engagement and email comments, I am really excited to share where we are in our thinking about creek restoration. So as a reminder, creek alignment will be selected based on a thorough analysis of site conditions, consideration of site constraints, including but not limited to the King County sewer main line on the site, and modeling showing which alignment could result in the greatest floodplain storage and other watershed benefits. So right now we're looking at 3 options, all of which would allow for floodplain, which is a side-to-side reconnection, and hyporeic, this is an up and down connection connecting the stream bed to the ground underneath. All these alignments would allow for both of those kinds of very important stream restoration. Option 1 would follow the current creek alignment, and again, would allow for some widening of the creek and the floodplain and hyporeic reconnection. Option 2 would include increased length through a meander, allowing us to add more complexity to the creek. And again, the floodplain and hyporeic restoration would be possible. There would also be widening. And then option 3 would increase the length of the creek by moving it a little bit further north than the current alignment. So again, there would be floodplain reconnection, hyporeic reconnection, and then some increased complexity through increased length and some widening. So again, all 3 alignments would allow for all that floodplain and hyporeic restoration that I just talked about and fit with the park design concept examples that Amber will show you in just a little bit. So, and I very much look forward to keeping you updated on our progress on giving as much back to Thornton Creek on the project site as we can. Okay, so backing up just a little bit, in workshop 1, we asked you to share neighborhood needs and hopes and dreams for the project site. From those conversations, we examined them for frequency of mention of ideas, and that helped us glean ideas for the park that we represented with the National Park Service icon shown here. One of our main takeaways from workshop number 1 and the related in-person outreach was that there's a really high degree of alignment within the community and between the community and the city about what ideas would work well for this community green space and for the creek. And then in workshop 2, and in lots of in-person engagement that I had in the community, by placing tiles representing these community-generated park ideas on a map of the project site, you created the first round of park design sketches for us. Hundreds of community members created 41 park designs, and it was truly delightful to hear you all talk about your ideas as you were creating either on your own or in community. I really loved how excited you all were about the park and how thoughtful you were about Thornton Creek and your neighbors. And then Amber will take it from here to explain how we took the park designs that you created and synthesized them into what we have for you tonight.
Thanks, Tracy. So following with our data-driven approach to finding community consensus in the design process, we took all of the designs that the community submitted, and you can see the grid numbering and lettering. What we did is we measured the frequency that each of those objects, each tile, appeared within the given cells of the map. And then again, based on a data-supported approach, we looked at what was the most popular occurrence, where those objects were hosted most often. And we came up with this diagrammatic plan, so that what this represents after that analysis is to find the common trends across each design. So this diagrammatic plan illustrates a consolidated design that represents the community's shared ideas. So the plan shows us how community members that participated in the exercise and participated in this process would like to use the park. So this really illustrates the community's consensus on the park vision. Combined with this information, we looked at all of the feedback that we had received through other sources as well. So the feedback through surveys and through commentary, we discussed all of that with the City of Seattle, the different parks departments, and with Mid-Sound to bring this forward into something that looks more like a plan that follows the guidance here for how the park would be used, but actually starts to put that into a site layout that then could be used to inform a concept design and then to construction drawings. So next slide. So here's an example of what that plan starts to look like when we put it in more of a design language. So you can see where we have some different items and elements worked to represent where the placement of those might be. So from a diagrammatic plan, we'll refine the design into something that's constructible on the park site. So a functional layout of the elements, the basis for those next steps, including construction plans. And then the next step is what we refer to as concept design. So the concept design needs to respond to the physical constraints of the site, as well as the design requirements. At this park, we have a commitment to universal accessibility. So that includes ADA compliance with many of the site's features, as many as possible. We have a commitment to working around the existing site elements that really give the site character. So we have things like the mature trees, the existing canopy, steep slopes, wetland. There will be characteristics of the site like seasonal flooding that the design needs to contend with. And then we also have a lot of utilities, sewer and other things that are running through the site that we have an obligation to maintain and work around. So next slide. So when we move into concept design, we start with looking at inspiration that the community has really shared with us throughout this process. So for this park, a lot of the community's conversation really talked about the site's intrinsic natural features. So things like preserving the green space that's there, appreciating the mature tall trees, that the site provided a connection with nature in a very urban environment. Many people talked about the creek itself and about salmon using the creek, the desire for salmon to use the creek in increased frequency as these restoration projects continue throughout the basin. We also heard about the importance to and the connection with the Lake City community, and that included just people's relationship with seeing this as the little red house, all the way back to acknowledging fishing and other things that happened on the creek prior to its current development state. And then as well, the original inhabitants of the area being a really important part of the site's history. So these images aren't meant to be literal, but they do help us to identify the character of the site, and we can use them to inspire some of the physical forms of the design. So on the next slide, we also took inspiration from what is the vision for ecological restoration at the park. So this includes what we would assume that we would see as typical with a stream channel restoration or restored creek or floodplain project. So all of these are going to be critical elements of the vision of the design. So whatever the park does in its incarnation to allow people to access it, we want things that will feel right and be complementary to these different materials. So that might include things like stream bed gravel and boulders. There might be woody debris placed as part of the stream restoration, or things that will naturally recruit in a healthy stream system. We do have on-site ecologies and landscapes like the wetland that's there that needs some restoration, but its presence and its species are still apparent. There's some slope forest areas, and then of course we'll have the restored floodplain and the native plants that would be present in those communities. So next slide. So we also look forward to what materials might be used for the park's future construction. So at this stage, we're not selecting any materials, but we do think forward to what might be good materials choices to make sure that we're designing appropriately for resilient park facilities. So maintaining the future investment is a big component of designing a public place. And so we want to think what white might we need to use, and then how would that impact the way that we design today. So in the design exploration, next slide, the shape of the park and the need to work around the existing trees and contend with the sloping terrain, providing accessibility in paths and ramps and navigating the landscape, it started to lend itself to a curving shape. And in this, we really saw a relationship to the jumping salmon. And we thought that this related well to the story of salmon using this restored creek, and of salmon really sharing this new park with the community, and adding to the long story of people and animals living here together. So trying to find harmony between how the park will be used by the public and then how the natural area restoration can work in concert with one another. So we did use this form to start to generate ideas for the park's concept. We developed a series of elements that align with the vision that the community shared, so thinking in terms of park uses. But we wanted to provide flexibility for the community, you guys, to share more input on the design through the exercises that we have designed for you today. So the concept is a little different than one that you might typically see, where you see a design and it seems finished. Our concept is actually a kit of parts. So we designed it as different elements in different areas of the park so that they could work well together. Again, as Tracy mentioned, they work well with the stream in any of its incarnations, however that direction is going to go in the next phase of the project. We also have a series of elements that work well in these different areas of the park and can be paired up with one another to create a variety of different design conceptions. So whatever the concepts that are created today, we'll be reviewing those with the City of Seattle, coming up with preferred design, and then using that design as the basis for the later steps in the design process, which would include the construction drawings and selecting materials. So as designers, we don't come up with a single design. We try to test things out, different programs to see what works, what might feel right for the site, how do we achieve balance. So here are two example plans that were produced from the elements in the concept design toolkit. What we're essentially asking you to do in the Miro board exercise and the exercise when we get to our breakout rooms is to be looking at how these different elements work together. And so we created two examples to talk with you today. So both of these examples work with the creek configurations. You can see the one on the left shows the meander, the one on the right shows more of the straight approach, and both fit within that envelope of the creek regrading. So both of these examples feature accessible boardwalks and trails. There is different length of trail, but both of them offer, forested trail and natural trail experiences that are ADA compliant. There's a variety of seating options. So we have a series of seating walls, benches, and tables that are working in each of the designs. They both include scenic overlooks in the higher point of the park's terrain. So that's off of 125th. And both examples retained most of the site's tall trees. So with the floodplain regrading, there is some clearing of vegetation and trees around the creek that will have to happen in order to achieve that revised stream alignment. But by and large, outside of the creek work, the rest of the public features that we have proposed don't lead to any more tree removal. So that was something that many community members commented on. We felt like it was really important to aim for a net add of trees to the extent that we can, rather than tree loss. So they also provide for room for the creek and floodplain, and then both designs would yield that natural green space park for passive recreation that is largely still natural in its character. So our first example, we'll go to the plan on the left. We're calling this the solitude or lower impact plan. So this example has a modest program of amenities. So it's a modest number or menu of amenities. It provides a relaxing and immersive experience while minimizing the impacts on the park's natural resources. So there's small gathering areas, small plazas. They provide room for individuals and small groups to recreate in nature. So the placement of the amenities is largely focused on the areas of the prior disturbance. So there's very little new disturbance. And then the amenities really, the way that we've got them set up, they would hold small groups, but wouldn't really accommodate large groups gathering in any of these smaller plazas. Okay. So the second example, this was the plan that was shown on the right. We're calling this the gathering or maximum amenity example. So the second example concept, it features more amenities, so longer trails, longer boardwalks, which would allow more people to use the park at a time. The larger plazas, you can see these shown in the lower left and the top right. These also allow for larger groups to gather in the park in a single area. So there are more elements to this example, but again, most of those elements are focused in already disturbed spaces. This example also features on the lower right-hand corner of the plan, so the southeast corner, a stair climb in the corner of the park, which would also provide a second entrance to the park. As Tracy mentioned, our placement of entrances is somewhat constrained by the surrounding private property, but this design does allow for 2 entrances off of 125th. Okay, so next we have some sections. So these are just through the proposed park entrance, illustrating the difference between each of the 2 concept examples that we saw before. So in both of the examples, you can see how the amenities occur within the sloped area of the park. So the street is on the left side of the frame, and you can see how the site descends down to the creek on the right side of the frame. So this shows the lower impact plan, and you can see that the small plazas and trails are going to be surrounded with native trees. The small plazas are terraced in the middle section of this illustration. So you can see that the idea is for the development to work with the existing grade as much as possible. We would be using interspersed native vegetation in sloped planting beds to gradually move people into the center of the park, but to use that vegetation to hide some of that infrastructure so it doesn't look really imposing on what is actually not a very big park site. So this next section, the largest change will be in kind of the middle, where you see 2 plazas becoming a single plaza. So this shows the maximum amenity example. You'll notice that it's very similar to the last section. Mainly the difference is that small terrace is replaced with a single larger terrace, but the idea is still the same. So people are still moving through the site, using the existing grade, trying to minimize the look and the imposition of those spaces. So even though it is a larger gathering area, which would allow more people to get together in one space, the idea is still that the park will look natural in character, and all of those development areas will be sort of held and enveloped by native planting. So here are a few sketches showing the experience of the park. You can orient yourself to where we are in the park by looking at the key map on the lower left-hand side of the illustration. This is a view of the park entrance. It shows a small arrival plaza and overlook off of the sidewalk on 125th. And then it has a ramped trail into the park's interior. This next view is from the park entrance. So this sketch shows how the 2 smaller plazas might look within the park, looking down from that entrance overlook. So the terraced overlook would highlight views of the creek and floodplain. There are a few trees not represented in here because we wanted to be able to look a little bit through the site, but largely the area is treed. It's these small islands of visitor experience within what is a larger native planted natural area. This next sketch shows the experience of being within those terraced plazas near the park entrance. So in this case, we're actually on a ramped path that is right around the lower plaza area. We're looking back at the upper terrace. So you can see that there is, again, that descent of some of these terraces into the landscape, but we're using vegetation and we're using topography as much as possible to try and minimize minimize the look of them so that you feel like you're on these treehouse terraces as you're descending down towards the creek level. So this next image, this is a representation of an overlook and a view of the creek. So this sketch is actually based on the overlook off the larger gathering area in that scenario, but you can assume that the view from the overlook in either one of those entrance designs would be similar in terms of providing an open view across the creek and into the floodplain, showing the boardwalk trails that are further into the park. This next view is a view from the bridge. In this case, we're standing on the bridge and looking back at the park entrance. Based on the modeling, these views actually look very similar in terms of whether it's the large gathering or the small gathering plan. Again, most of the view, and we would plan it this way, would be to have the area surrounded by native planting and trees. So the next sketch shows the plaza at the north end of the park. In this view, we're standing on the trail approaching it and looking back towards that area. So we're actually looking at the former home site, the retaining walls that are right now holding up that corner of the property behind the house. Those would be removed, the trees would be retained, and that would be restored to a slope forest ecology. So using ferns and ground covers to really, bring that natural area in to hold that space. Okay, the next vignette. So here's a view of the overlook. So this is the second entrance, the southeast corner of the park, as if we're standing on it looking down that stair set. So this would be that second entrance located in that location. And it would be the view off of the overlook would be showing the slope forest and the lowland forest trail. Okay. So as mentioned before, what we developed is intended to be a kit of parts. With options for how visitors could use the park in a way that's consistent with what the community shared about their vision. We've seen 2 example plans, and we've seen different example options for several areas of the park. So we've got the small group and large group gathering spaces at the park entrance, and then in the northeast corner. We saw different configurations of trail throughout the floodplain and around the park. And then we saw an option for a stair climb and second entrance at the southeast corner of the park. In our breakout room exercise, we would like to ask for your help to review the options for the different areas of the park, and then select the options that you and your group think are the best choices to create a park that's appropriate for this place. Something that aligns with the community's vision. So that's your vision, your friends and neighbors, and what you've heard throughout this process. And what would create a new nature park that would be the right place for the Lake City neighborhood. So here's a preview of the exercise that you'll be doing in the breakout rooms. In your small group discussion, please consider some of the following questions. We're looking for a park that's inclusive and equitable. What might be the appropriate level of impact to the park's landscape to provide these public amenities? What balance of amenities is right for this park? So considering the park size, considering the park's resources, how many people and what level of recreation is reasonable? And then we'd also like to hear your ideas on if and how art might be incorporated into the design. So public art can be incorporated in many ways. You can do an object, a sculpture in space. You can actually have that be part of the site features and furnishings, so have it be more integrated. And there's many ways that we can deploy art in this way. So we are not making a decision about what that art is going to look like, but we're really excited to start the discussion and have that be part of the information that is carried to the next phase of the project. Okay, so I'm going to turn it back over to Tracy to introduce us for the breakout rooms.
Thank you so much, Amber. I'm so excited about this park. A bit about the breakout rooms before we send you there. You will be automatically assigned to a breakout room. Breakout room discussions will be recorded, but not publicly shared. Once in your breakout room, please feel free to turn on your camera. In fact, sometimes it's nice to talk to other faces in this online environment. So if you're comfortable, please turn on your camera, but please stay on mute unless speaking. And there's actually no pressure to turn on your camera. If you'd be more comfortable not having your camera on, that's absolutely fine too. Once in your breakout room, please feel free, please feel free to turn on your camera, but please stay on mute unless speaking. Use the raise hand feature in Zoom, or use the chat to ask questions or give feedback. Your breakout room facilitator will give a demonstration on how to use the raise hand feature in Zoom if your breakout room needs it. And then if that seems like a hurdle too high, you just don't want to deal with the clicks, you also can raise your physical hand, and we'll be watching out for that too. After the breakout room activity, we'll come back together to hear reports from each group. You will be picking a community member in your breakout room to represent your group, and then you'll work together on some talking points, the things that you would like that representative to say to the entire group. If there's nobody in your group who is up to speaking, then that will default to the facilitator or the note taker. But one of my very favorite parts about our last workshop was hearing directly from you. So I would love to hear your voices tonight as well. So Amber already went over these questions, but I'm going to highlight them. because they are the things that we would love for you to be considering as you're putting together a park from our kit of parts. You don't need to remember these all right now. They'll be available for you to see as you are collaborating in your breakout rooms. They're in our mural board, but again, I want to highlight them here so that you're hearing them 2-3 times before you do the exercise. How can the park serve the Lake City community inclusively and equitably? What is an appropriate level of impact on the park's natural features? What balance of amenities will create the desired natural park experience? And then, should public art be featured in the park design? If so, where and how can it be incorporated? And just like Amber, I would encourage you to think really freely about what the art could be. You know, is it a standalone art, an object just that's art for the sake of art? Or is it art that's infused into a more utilitarian or functional piece of the park, like through the benches or through a bike rack or something like that? So there'll be plenty of time in breakout rooms for questions. So please don't hesitate to ask if you have any. And if your facilitator or note taker feel like they don't know, one of us can come into the breakout room to help along. So with that, Amani is going to randomly assign people into breakout rooms. Facilitators and note takers, when that happens, you'll join your assigned breakout room. And anyone, if you need anything while you're there, let us know. Everyone, welcome back. I am really so excited to hear from each breakout room now. I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to share your mural board from your breakout rooms while you're presenting, so nobody else has to worry about doing that. And we'll start with breakout room 1, I think. And I had some guiding questions here. What were some of the highlights from your breakout room? What questions or considerations came up for you? And how did your park come together? But if you don't hit on all those, perfectly fine. I'm just excited to hear what you have to say. So was there somebody from breakout room 1 who would like to share?
Yeah, I think that's my group.
Is that you, John?
Yeah.
Hi, John.
Hi, Tracy. Good to see you.
It's good to see you. Yeah, I'm excited to hear from you. Take it away.
Yeah, so it was a good discussion. We covered a lot of ground in half an hour. You know, on the equity side, the biggest thing that we talked about in some detail was you know, accessibility for wheelchairs. And we were assured that you know, was part of the plan, both for the ramps and taking into account, you know, railings and trail edges. One area where that both was part of the discussion, but kind of the broader you know, questions of both, you know, impact and public amenities came into discussion was we liked the higher impact versions, including at least one large plaza, because that would be, we were informed, you know, large enough to be able to handle a school group that could be up in the, you know, 30 kids or so range. But it was, I think, generally the consensus in our group that one large plaza was enough. And that should be the one that's closest to the street for a variety of reasons, but the accessibility for people in wheelchairs being definitely a part of that. And the general sense was that from our group, that there really didn't need to be not only a large plaza, but really much in that back area, besides maybe, you know, a bench or two and a little bit of an overlook sense to it, but to try to minimize impacts in that sense. But at the same time, there was an interest in the whole loop trail aspect of this higher impact one, meaning because it really would be probably a more attractive amenity for people, from the community enjoying the park. But without that middle connection, which you can see is absent, right there. And I think there again, it was trying to balance the considerations of how much impact versus how much the community would be enjoying particular issues. And I guess on that score, one other thing was where the picnic areas, and we leaned towards not including an asphalt trail and additional picnic tables in the back, while still allowing for picnicking in that first place that you would encounter, right down there. And I guess the last thing that comes to mind, well, I guess two other things. One on the public art, we didn't have a extensive discussion on that, but we talked about the fact that Native American art had been discussed in the community workshop too, and that there was both, I think, a generally very positive reaction to that, but it also would be consistent with the ideas that some people have had about a Native American name for this place. So there was, I think, sympathy towards that. And lastly, there were questions raised about fencing or screening on the perimeter. And I think there was a readiness to accept the possibility of a vegetative screen, but at the very least, making being as respectful as possible to the private properties around the site by providing that type of a perimeter.
Great. And I see too, maybe you could say just a second or two about this. We've got the next out.
Yeah, we didn't really get a chance to discuss it in detail, but I got the sense that and other members of the group can speak up if they would disagree. But I originally myself had spoken up saying maybe a second stairway would be fine, but that seemed to be less supported by the group overall, and I would certainly be happy to use that as one other way to try to minimize overall impacts on the site.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, John. I'm excited to view the recording from your room so I can dig into all those details
It was a good discussion.
Yeah, super. Great.
Hey, Tracy, do you think that group 4 could jump in and do our little presentation?
Absolutely. Group 4, I'm ready for you.
Awesome.
Hello. All right, thanks. I have to leave at 8, so that's why he's asking.
Sure. Good.
We had a lot of the same concerns as Group 1. We had people who were felt very strongly on both sides of the two designs, wanting it to be very available for just the natural environment and not have a lot of disturbances to the wildlife there, as well as people wanting to see different uses for it, including schools, classrooms coming and using it as an educational site, and people walking their dogs and things like that. So we tried to kind of come up with something that was balanced, but we kind of went almost in the opposite way as far as what we picked. So we have kind of the smaller use entrance, but we used the staircase and could see this trail on the bottom kind of extending over to that other side. But we got rid of the trail going north from where the staircase is. And then on the boardwalk, we extended that around in kind of a circle and made that kind of a closed off area, leaving the east side of the park very much undisturbed. Let's see. Some of the concerns we had were in having too much solitude or too much kind of in the back where you wouldn't be able to see, that it may give people the incentive to camp or do other things that we wouldn't want people using the park for. So we kind of wanted to have more of like a line of sight from the front to the back on that side, but also to have kind of this undisturbed area and to make sure that the creek trail, the creek bed itself was not going to cause damage to the environment that's already there. As far as the art, we had some really great ideas, and we all kind of came together on that, of having art that was kind of built into the environment and usable as part of the environment. The things where you may not see the art right away, it may be like built into the shape of the benches, or it may be, you know, stuff that's carved into the paths that you're walking on, or things where it's usable by the animals in the environment, like as artistic bird houses or owl houses, things like that. And we really also liked the salmon motif of having, you know, that shape kind of woven throughout the different elements, the artistic elements of the park.
Fantastic. Is there anything else you'd like to add? Somebody's clapping. Virtually, however that works. Yeah, is there anything else that you'd like to add? No?
I think so. I think it's
Thank
it.
you so much. Yeah, thumbs up. Jack says great thumbs up. Thank you so much, Brandon. I super appreciate you being here and stepping up. I love hearing your voice.
Thank you.
And I hope that you get to whatever you need to do at 8. Okay, how about group 2? Is group 2 ready to go?
We are ready, and I want to give one more chance to anyone on our team to speak up if you feel comfortable.
Oh, yeah.
Anybody?
Who from the community and it was in group 2? I would love to hear your voice if you're comfortable.
No
Lisa,
pressure.
sounds like it's you.
Well,
Okay.
I can speak up. That's-
Gary, yes,
Yeah.
you can.
Oh,
Go ahead,
thank you,
Gary.
Gary.
I'll speak up.
Okay.
And I'm not going to catch all the ideas that people had, but so first of all, I think the general consensus, and again, we took a vote, was the loop concept, the idea of having a loops that traffic would kind of not be as congested. I don't know if you're in a congested park, but the idea of it kind of flowing around was the one that we thought would be best. We did have a discussion kind of around the flow through the park, with the meandering versus the straight line, and what the impact of that might be. And based on what we kind of understand now is that that's really going to be determined by the engineers that are doing this to kind of figure out what the best way to do it. What I couldn't figure out when I was looking at it was why the floodplain for the straight through was smaller than the floodplain for the meandering, if they were going to both control the same amount of water. But I'm not going to get into that. But that was, you know, one of the issues that we talked a little bit about. In terms of, you know, we talked about the accessibility of the park being important, and in terms of the inclusive and equity aspect of it, that any signage that we had in the park would be multilingual, representing the community that was going to use the park. One thing that we didn't mention, but I would say as well, is we probably would be nice to have Braille as well represented on our signage, so that folks could kind of get the sense of the park through their words and enjoy just the atmosphere of the park. We didn't, in terms of the placement of things, we really didn't spend very much time on that. It was more, some people wanted kind of the minimal impact to the nature of the area, which would, you know, kind of take away kind of the trailing kind of on the eastern part of the park and kind of keep it to the western part. In terms of the stairs, the ones that commented about it said that they felt that that a second entrance would be a nice idea to have for the park, giving access in both directions. So that was important. We talked about the crossing into the park, safety. Was there going to be a light or not, or a crosswalk coming in, because this is a pedestrian park. So we wanted to make sure we realized that there wasn't going to be any parking really for people, that it was people would be walking to the park. So that was kind of an important aspect. We talked about a little bit about the fencing and the neighbors, you know, around the park. We didn't get into detail, but that was also a concern, in the proximity to the neighbors. One thing that I'm just thinking about now that we've never talked about, as far as I know, is the lighting of the park. Is there going to be any lighting in the park? I mean, in Seattle, you know, but right now it's dark at 4 o'clock. So I don't know if thinking about lighting is going to be, you know, for safety reasons and for other things. So appropriate lighting. And then we talked a little bit about art for the park, and kind of, having it be natural if we could, and talked a little bit about maybe using, well, I talked about the mural projects that go on in Lake City, and maybe incorporating some of that with some of the kids' murals they're involved in, some other murals, and even perhaps on the walkways that we have. Something down on that was mentioned as well. So that's kind of the things that I remember, and anybody else have some other thoughts?
Sounds like you had a very rich conversation.
Yeah, it was very interesting. It was good.
I'm going to look forward to hearing your breakout room recording as well. Can I ask you one question about this note here? It says floodplain open, and it's over this boardwalk. Can you clarify what your group was thinking there? Were you thinking take that one out to leave the floodplain open, or were you thinking something else?
I think we were thinking about taking it out, but somebody else could help on that one.
Yeah, I think that was a bit of mine. So yeah, taking that out. So we wanted the loop trail, but no, we kind of a minimal. And then there was also questions about kind of the stream, how well it can meander, and kind of what are making sure there's enough floodplain.
I love that you're thinking about the creek. The creek is a very important stakeholder in this project, isn't it? Okay, the main one, yeah. All right, anything else from breakout room 2? Thank you so much. Breakout room 3, I'm ready for you.
All right, I'm going to also offer up to the group if anybody that they would like to speak, but I'm also happy to speak if you are tucked in for the evening.
Who is in there? Was Judy, were you in there? Who else was in there?
Girl, I'm not going to out my people.
I kind of peeked in. That's why I knew Judy was in there, but I won't make Judy speak if she doesn't want to.
I don't want to speak because I'm biased towards my own ideas, but if Piper misses something, or there's something I just feel has to go in, I'll pop in at the end.
Brad, do you think you could temper yourself?
I could try, but I don't.
Do you want to try? Do you?
No, I don't. I really don't, because there's all kinds of sticky notes all over everything. Somebody else can be in charge of that.
Okay. Well, Piper, take it away then.
I'll start with a summary, and then our breakout 3 team can chime in.
Okay.
So a lot of ideas that the other breakout rooms mentioned were echoed here. The first thing we talked about was whether or not to keep that central floodplain open or not. But then if there is any flooding and seeing the water come through, it might be nice to stand over it and watch the change, similar to how you can see it in Carkeek. There was concern for the safe access into the park, not only for people who might be accessing it from the neighborhood, but also people who are biking. So you'll see those white lines are like crosswalks, whether they're light metered or just other ways, because that street is really busy and scary. Our group opted to have a larger gathering space in the back. because they like to have a quiet area there away from the traffic of the busy road, away from the noise and air pollution, just to sit back in nature and enjoy it and eat lunch. And then that similar feeling.
Various options.
And then there's also that Northwest Grove, where the picnic tables were. Again, there was that, how do we keep that feeling safe? How do we keep it so it's open to people to use, but not to use in sketchy ways? Then we also talked about points where the bike racks could be. And people like the idea of having bike racks at both entrances. Especially if people bike by and they're like, oh, what's that? Oh, I want to stop there. Oh, there's a bike rack. And then also talking about the artwork, the idea of having the bridge be art and having it kind of be that center artwork piece, but also having artwork scattered throughout the park that represents the different languages and the cultures of this area, as well as maybe having permanent but also rotating artwork, so that there are new options that are coming in. So it's kind of like, hey, come visit the park and see what artwork is new. Having artwork built into these different areas, so around those fish that you see there. And what else? My group. What am I forgetting? Chime in. Feeling good?
I think that was pretty good. I wanted to, if I can, address something that was brought up in some of the other groups about being minimally invasive, about, you know, intruding into the wildlife areas, to give the wildlife and whatever, you know, more a sense of security. As someone who's very familiar with Meadowbrook Pond, I think the real trick to allowing the various wildlife to feel safe is to trap people on a boardwalk or trap them on a trail. So when I look at like the Northwest Grove, one of the issues I had was that, you know, why not just maybe lose that or keep people on a path or something? Because you go down to Meadowbrook and you can have a great blue heron, you know, 10 feet away from you. You can have baby beavers or parent beavers. They built their lodges right up against the boardwalk. So I think the real, if you want animals to feel good, don't let people get off the walk. That to me is another reason to get rid of the Northwest Grove. But yeah, I think otherwise, I think that's pretty good, right?
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that perspective and chiming in. Is there anyone else from Breakout Room 3 who'd like to add a nugget of information? No? Okay. I am going to go back to our presentation then. Okay. First, I have to say thank you so much for sharing your hearts and your ideas with us tonight. I truly love hearing from you. It is one of my very favorite parts of this project. Thinking about the fish and the creek is one of them, and then being able to interact with all of you wonderful human beings is the other. So I am so, again, delighted to have heard from you, and I am so looking forward to hearing the recordings from your rooms. And if there is something that you like really on your heart or mind and you'd like to say, please reach out, send me an email, be in touch. So let's see. So starting now and into the new year, the project team will integrate community feedback from this workshop into our evolving understanding of the site. And then Seattle Parks and Recreation and Seattle Public Utilities will finalize their preferred option in early 2023. And that will all come, the options that they get to select from will all come from what you have shared with us tonight and the other in-person outreach that I do to communities who we can't reach through this kind of workshop. Then we will plan to come back to the community for more sharing and listening in 2023 so that we can continue this collaborative process together. In the meantime, We'll share updates on the project website, and I encourage you to again reach out anytime. So thank you so much for taking time out of your Wednesday evening to spend with us. It really is an honor and a privilege to have you here. Could not build this park without you. It would not be nearly as meaningful if we did not have your voices. So we look forward to being in touch again soon. We have contact emails up here for the for me, and then my counterparts at Parks, Jonathan Pagan and SPU, Holly Scarlett. Our emails are there, and you are welcome to reach out to any one of us at any time. I would be remiss if I did not thank King County. They have provided super generous funding for early community engagement. We couldn't be with you if not for their generous financial support. So our funding comes from both the King County Flood Control District and the King County Wastewater Treatment Division. And again, thank you. We really couldn't do this without you. So appreciate you. Thank you again so much. And I hope you have a wonderful night. You are free to go, staff. If you'd like to stick around for a debrief, I will stay on for the next half hour.
Thanks,
Thank
Tracy.
you.